you know, the problem is there's a moratorium by MoDOT to put them in. I'm glad to say that, you know, this new Jefferson County Council is opposed to red light cameras, as much as many of you are, and I look forward to not seeing them in Jefferson County, and I really would applaud the members of this city council that would vote against this, renewing this contract, because at the end of the day, I can't say better than what comments you gentlemen made earlier. From the safety aspect, there's better ways. From the legal standpoints, there's better ways. And, you know, just I'll leave you with this. I'm an elected official. You guys are elected officials. We have a duty and an obligation. Me personally, 29,000 people in my district and 200,000 in Jefferson County, you to however many in your city, just protect people from big government and from entities like this, from wasting their tax dollars and taking it from them. So I would encourage all of you to vote no on renewing your camera contract. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, on your intersections, does your cameras go both? You have cameras going both ways, or just one north and south, or east and west?
Actually, there's all four ways. I mean, you know, most of them are on Interstate or Highway 141, and basically the cross streets as well. They both have. They're a one-camera system in Arnold. And Jefferson County's been trying to do a two-camera system, but, you know, still the same revocable presumption argument that, you know, doesn't really fly too well in court. So. And my number's on there if I can be of service to you guys. Please feel free to call.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If I could say something before we vote. I think something we've lost sight of is the fact that, and I take exception to John's comment about swindling, if nobody ever ran a red light, it's not a yellow light camera, it's a red light camera. And if nobody ran a red light, nobody would make a dime. Neither ATF, whoever, or us would make a dime on that. And I have seen behavior change, and I really sympathize with the gentleman that almost runs into people. But I've learned in my old age to give people a little more space, both for me and for them. Of course, that gives space for young people who are 16 to get in between me and the guy in front of me. But so I'm sorry, and but I feel that I would vote not to discontinue the contract.
You can go to the camera. Do we have someone else?
Go, please.
Go to the
I'm
microphone.
finished. Come on, shut up.
Pardon me. My name is Matthew Hay. I am the former Ward 1 councilman from the city of Arnold. I have the pleasure of representing Ward 1. Shortly after the red light camera contract was signed with ATS, most of the salient issues have been discussed this evening, and quite lucidly. I did want to bring up a few things that I didn't hear discussed and thought, you know, might play into your decision. Regarding the point system with these tickets, it's absolutely non-existent. Missouri has a state statute that requires that all moving violations be reported to the Missouri Department of Revenue. However, as we've stated, if we don't take a picture of the driver, we can't identify the individual that caused the criminal act, so therefore we have to reduce it to a civil act and make it a non-moving violation. The problem with that is, and I can sadly say, when I was a bit younger than I am, just about 16, I had worked for about 3 years at that point almost. I bought myself a brand new red Camaro. It was shiny, it was fast, manual standard transmission. I was ready to go. I got one of those dreaded letters from the Department of Motor Vehicles that told me if I got one more point on my license, they were going to come take my license. And you know what? I was a hazard back then. I will completely admit that. The problem is, with these red light cameras, I would be able to run that red light camera every day and twice on Sunday, and I would not have been taken off that road. I would have been a menace to the civil population. And the only thing that I would have done is I would receive an invoice, and I'll call it an invoice because I don't know that we can even call it a uniform criminal citation, from ATS in most cases, because I believe they mail them directly. I'm not sure what they do in the city of Washington here. But I would receive it, and I would get it, and then it was my choice to come to court or not. If I chose not to come to court, absolutely nothing would happen. I would get a couple follow-ups threatening to issue a warrant for my arrest, and eventually the city of Arnold would no longer do anything about it. It would fade off into obscurity. The issue being, should I come to court, if my ticket wasn't dismissed, in quite a few cases in the city of Arnold, we would literally have our municipal judge, typically when it was a stand-in, because they fired the original municipal judge because he refused to prosecute these tickets, so they had to hire a new one as soon as they signed the contract. But we would have a fill-in municipal judge. The judge would get up there and say, if you're here for a red light ticket, I see you later. I can't prosecute them. I can't meet the evidentiary standard of evidence, and they would go on their way. However, In the off chance that you were actually convicted in municipal court, our ordinance, much like yours, I'm sure, in order to meet the state constitutional standard, has a clause in it that says that you can appeal that ticket to county circuit court. Just the same in Arnold. So I had a buddy that wanted to experiment with that. His daughter, I believe, he had received the ticket, obviously, but I believe it was his daughter driving the car, so he tells the story. So he goes to court. He's a former councilman as well. They find him guilty. And he says, okay, I want to appeal it to circuit court. So he pays the $37 and sends it out to Jefferson County Circuit. He shows up for his court date, waits, sits through the entire docket, and the prosecutor from Arnold never showed up. So he's speaking to the judge afterwards, and, the judge happens to tell him, yeah, well, the prosecutor for Arnold has never shown up for any of these circuit court violations. Because to send our municipal prosecutor there, we're paying him, and I'm not familiar with what his current contract is, but I believe it's probably about $105 an hour that we pay him. He's paid hourly. So he goes to municipal court and sits there for 4 hours through the entire docket so he can prosecute this one red light camera appeal. The city has now just paid out $500, $600, $700 worth of court costs to make, in our case, about $66. So it wasn't fiscally prudent in order to even send anybody to prosecute. So why even bother to send these tickets out? And they didn't show up once. I mean, it's
Well, thank you for your input. Okay? I mean, it's very frustrating.
It's frustrating. You discussed the issue quite...
Do you do commercials on site?
No, I don't.
Are you an attorney?
Ask Tucker.
But, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I will sit down and let you go.
Hey, Tim, didn't we have one where we put a number of $100 in or a couple $1,000 in on a $100 fine?
$1,326.
Okay. And
To collect our
13?
You're kicking the dead horse here.
I'm just telling you.
Well,
You're going to talk me into switching.
Come on.
I don't want to do that. I'm in TIF. I live in Ward 3, Councilman Groff, Councilman Brinker representing. And I would tell Mr. Hay over here that we do use verbatim minutes. You just cost our secretary about 4 hours.
I was opposed to that, too.
I wouldn't brag about that one. Quickly, I would like to appeal to the open and objective mind which represents this entire council and the mayor. I would like to say that my life, my profession is driven solely off realistic data. It's not driven off how I feel. It's not driven off the way that I emotionally feel about something. I need to know hard data. The chief is the exact same way. That's what I care about. When Brenda Kleinheider asked me about red light cameras, how I felt about them at a ladies' Republican meeting about 3 years ago, my answer was, I think that's a great idea, but let me do some research on it. And I did do some research on it. And when I'm telling the open and objective mind, if you do research on red light cameras, the conclusion that you will come to, and I think one of the best studies I've ever seen, and I know we've heard a lot of data, I promise you I'll keep this quick. There was a guy that took all the studies, not just one or two of them. He took them all. He took 20 primary source studies. He looked at 264 intersections and 20 jurisdictions. In that he found, and this is, I want to preface this, as a councilman and as a mayor, I think when you leave the podium you should say, I hope I do no harm to the citizens in my community. What he found was that there was a 12 to 27, and I know it's a fairly big disparity, but there's approximately a 27% increase in injury accidents in intersections with red light cameras. I know you guys would feel terrible if the result of your decision caused somebody harm. To Councilman Sullentroff's point, we must simply take responsibility. I tell my wife constantly, when you go through an intersection, you must take the responsibility of clearing both sides of that intersection. You can't just simply expect that green or that red light to protect you. So my closing comments, I do hope to appeal to the open and objective mind. I think I've said that 3 times already. And I do think it's very important. And if you do look at the data, the hard data out there, it's proven time and time again that they don't work. They simply don't do what they're built to do. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a happy New Year.
Thank you. Okay, one more?
I'll be short. I'm Ron Mattel
Sure.
with American Traffic Solutions, and Chief Hans, our data shows that injury accidents in the intersections monitored by red light cameras during the period have been reduced 50%. That is hard data. With all due respect to the council and everyone here, I know this is a controversial subject. If the council would elect to defer this matter for further discussion, ATS would be willing to waive the 60-day period for notice on your decision on the contract. We would be willing to do that. We'd be willing to come back and make further presentations to particularly our PowerPoint to the council members that weren't here originally to show you how it works, specifically how it works and the benefits of the red light camera program. Thank you.
Thank you for your offer.
Can I ask a question while Charlie's walking up? John, you gave a statistic a while ago on the number of tickets that are given out locally and the number that are given out from people that are not in this area.
27% was, and that's from ATS's. It says only 27% of the citations issued were from the 63090. So only 27% were people who lived in town. Meaning, and I'm not sure how they get here, but it says meaning 73% of the violators are from people who do not live in Washington, are passing through, and most likely driving too fast and violating the I'm not sure how they come to that conclusion other than taking it out of their posterior.
Okay, so
I don't know where they're
based on those numbers, because I didn't want to listen to what everybody's saying, it would seem to me, I know the gentleman from Arnold says it's not so, but if there's only 20-something% of our local area residents that are being ticketed, it seems to me that our local area residents have changed their driving habits.
No, we're probably the ones that are breaking all the time for the guys that are trying.
No, I'm just going by your numbers and the tickets that are given, and it seems to me that we have dropped the number of tickets in our area, or there's a lot fewer tickets being given locally. So I would say, again, it does seem like people are changing their driving habits, just based on the numbers that I've heard tonight.
Connie, if you take a look at the back page of the page that I showed out, a little of, I'm sorry, I guess it's not the back, it's on the front, violated the signal was one accident in 2005. It went to 3 and then 1 and 4 and 1 and 4. It hasn't moved.
Well, I understand that, but again, I'm looking at what you said, and fewer people in our local area are getting tickets, which says to me we're changing our driving habits. We're driving safer. Whether accident or no accident, we're driving safer. I'm sorry.
Well, no, and I will just add that I, too, am one of those people that am more cautious around those stoplights. And so I concur with what you're saying as far as around other stoplights, too. I do pay more attention than I did normally.
Mayor, can I call for the question?
But
I'd like to call for the question to vote.
We have a motion by Salinger, seconded by Rhodes, with Buttermeyer adding on, right? Did you add something on to
And
that?
a vote in the affirmative is to get rid of the cameras.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay.
So to vote in the affirmative would be to
Not renew the contract.
discontinue the cameras.
And you write a letter to them.
Yeah, that's what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
I wrote that down.
Okay.
So do we need a roll call vote on this?
Yes, can we have one, please?
Salinger,
Yes.
Brinker,
Aye.
Budmeyer,
Yes.
Heydrich,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Witt,
No.
Groff,
No.
Meyer,
Yes.
So by your vote,
Six
you
in
have discontinued the red light cameras. Thank you. Standing ovations. Believe it? My gosh, the things that happen.
You come over, Mayor.